My name is Alyssa, and I am 32 years old. The bedroom I grew up in has always been my sanctuary, filled with memories and mementos from my journey through life. After my divorce, I returned to my parents' home temporarily to rebuild. I never expected to walk in one day to find them clearing out my things. With cold expressions, they announced my brother-in-law. Kyle would take my room, and I would sleep in the garage. My sister Hannah always got her way, but this betrayal cut deeper than all the others. Before I share how I stood up for myself, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you. I had built what I thought was a successful life in Chicago. My career as a financial analyst was thriving, my apartment overlooked the lake, and I had created a comfortable existence for myself. Then everything collapsed when I discovered my husband James had been cheating on me with a coworker. The pain was excruciating, but I refused to stay in a marriage built on lies. The divorce proceedings drained me emotionally and financially. Legal fees consumed my savings, and the housing market in Chicago made it impossible to afford a decent place on a single income while I was recovering from this emotional trauma. After weeks of weighing my options, I called my parents. Mom, Dad, I hate to ask this, but would it be possible for me to stay with you for a few months, just until I can save for a security deposit and find a more affordable place? I asked, my voice shaking with a mixture of embarrassment and desperation. Of course, sweetheart, my mother had replied warmly. Your room is always here for you. Come home and take some time to heal. My father had added, Family supports family during tough times. Your mother and I are here for you. Their immediate acceptance brought tears to my eyes. Despite being in my 30s, there was something comforting about returning to the safety of my childhood home during this vulnerable time. I packed my essential belongings, put the rest in storage, and made the drive from Chicago back to my hometown of Belleville, Pennsylvania. The first week back felt surprisingly nice. My childhood bedroom remained largely unchanged since my high school days. The soft lavender walls still displayed my academic achievement certificates, swimming competition medals, and photographs from happier times. My bookshelf contained dog-eared copies of beloved novels that had shaped my younger years. Sleeping under the same ceiling where I had once dreamed about my future brought an unexpected sense of comfort. My sister Hannah lived just 15 minutes away with her husband Kyle in a sprawling house that seemed excessive for just two people. Hannah had always been the favored child in our family dynamic, something I had grown to accept but never truly understood. While I worked multiple jobs to put myself through college, Hannah dropped out after one semester, but received a brand new car as a consolation prize. When I landed my first entry-level finance job and could barely afford rent, my parents helped Hannah with a substantial down payment on her first home. The pattern was clear throughout our lives. Hannah took and I worked. Hannah demanded and I earned. Hannah received and I achieved. Yet somehow my accomplishments were always minimized while her smallest efforts were celebrated extravagantly. Still, I tried to maintain a cordial relationship with my sister. When she married Kyle 4 years ago, I flew back home and helped organize her elaborate wedding, despite going through a rough patch in my own marriage. Kyle seemed nice enough, quiet, and accommodating to Hannah's every whim. Their relationship dynamic reminded me of my sister's relationship with our parents with Kyle, playing the role I had always occupied growing up. During my first days back home, I noticed my parents taking frequent calls from Hannah, their voices dropping to whispers when I entered the room. At the time, I thought nothing of it, assuming they were planning a surprise welcome home dinner or something similarly well-intentioned. My daily routine quickly established itself. Mornings were spent updating my resume, applying for jobs in the area, and searching apartment listings. Afternoons often involved helping my mother with household tasks or assisting my father with his hobby woodworking projects in the garage. Every interaction reinforced my belief that returning home had been the right decision during this difficult transition in my life. 2 weeks after my arrival, I had my first promising job interview at a local financial firm. The position offered a reasonable salary that would allow me to afford a modest apartment within a few months. The interview went well, and I left feeling hopeful for the first time since my divorce. "We will be in touch within the week," the hiring manager assured me with a warm handshake. Buoyed by this positive development, I drove back to my parents' house with a lighter heart. The sight that greeted me when I opened my bedroom door shattered that momentary happiness and marked the beginning of a painful family reckoning that had been brewing for decades. I froze in the doorway, unable to process what I was seeing. My mother was packing my clothes into garbage bags, while my father dismantled my bed frame. Boxes containing my recently unpacked belongings were stacked haphazardly in the corner. The walls had already been stripped of my photographs and certificates. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My father straightened up, wiping his brow with his forearm. "Oh, Alyssa. Good timing. Give us a hand with these boxes, will you?" "Why are you packing up my room?" I pressed, still standing in the doorway, unable to step inside what suddenly felt like a violation in progress. My mother avoided my gaze, continuing to stuff my clothing into bags. "We should have mentioned it earlier, but Kyle's mother is coming to visit for a month." "What does that have to do with my room?" The confusion in my voice was edged with growing dread. "Hannah and Kyle are having their guest room renovated," my father explained matter-of-factly. "The timing isn't ideal with Margaret's visit, so Kyle needs a place to stay while his mother takes Hannah's old room." The implications slowly registered. "So you're giving him my room? Where am I supposed to sleep?" "The garage has that old cot," my father replied, returning to dismantling my bed as if the matter was settled. "We've cleared a space between the workbench and the storage shelves. There's a space heater you can use if it gets chilly." I stepped fully into the room, now disbelief turning to anger. "You expect me to sleep in an unfinished garage while my brother-in-law takes my room? I am your daughter who's going through a divorce. He has a house 15 minutes away." "Now, Alyssa," my mother interjected, finally looking at me. "It's only temporary. Kyle needs proper accommodations, and you're just staying here until you get back on your feet anyway. There must be alternatives," I insisted, struggling to remain reasonable. "Kyle could commute, or he could take the garage space, or they could put his mother in a hotel. Why am I the one being displaced?" My father's expression hardened, a look I recognized from childhood whenever I questioned his decisions. "You're a guest here now, Alyssa. This is our house, and we decide how the rooms are allocated. Kyle is family too. I'm your daughter. I grew up in this room." My voice rose with frustration and hurt. My mother placed a hand on my arm. "Sweetheart, you need to be practical. You're 32 years old. This isn't really your room anymore, it's just a space you're borrowing during a tough time." "What about all my things, my memories?" I gestured to the boxes and bags. "You need to grow up," my father said dismissively. "They're just things. The important stuff can go with you to the garage." The conversation halted as the front door opened, and moments later, Hannah appeared in the doorway, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. "Oh, good, you're making progress," she said to our parents before turning to me. "Did they tell you about the new arrangements? Kyle will be so much more comfortable here while his mom visits." "And I'll be comfortable in the garage?" I asked bitterly. Hannah shrugged. "It's just for a few weeks. Besides, beggars can't be choosers, right? If you'd managed your marriage better, you wouldn't need to crash with Mom and Dad anyway." Her casual cruelty broke something inside me. "This has nothing to do with my divorce. This is about you always getting what you want at my expense. It's been happening our entire lives, and I'm sick of it." "Here we go again." Hannah rolled her eyes dramatically. "Poor Alyssa, always the victim. Mom and Dad have always treated us equally. It's not their fault you're so sensitive." "Equally?" I laughed without humor. "When have they ever chosen my needs over yours? Name one time, Hannah." My father stepped between us. "That's enough. Alyssa, you're being ridiculous and ungrateful. We opened our home to you during your crisis, and this is how you repay us, with accusations and drama." "I'm not creating drama. I'm responding to being thrown out of my room without discussion or consideration." Tears welled in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "This isn't about a room. This is about respect, and being treated like I matter in this family. My mother wrung her hands anxiously. Of course you matter, dear. But sometimes we have to make sacrifices for family, and right now, Kyle and Margaret need the proper bedrooms. The implication that I wasn't proper family stung like a physical blow. I looked around at the three of them, suddenly seeing with crystal clarity the dynamic that had shaped my entire life. I wasn't going to win this argument. I never had. I need some air, I finally said, turning away as the first tears escaped down my cheeks. Don't bother continuing to pack. I'll take care of my own things. I walked out of the house without another word, got into my car, and drove away with no particular destination in mind, just the desperate need to escape the suffocating reality that my own family considered me second class. I found myself at Lakeview Park, a place I had often retreated to as a teenager when family tensions ran high. The small lake sparkled under the afternoon sun, ducks gliding peacefully across its surface. I sat on a weathered bench and finally allowed myself to cry properly. The pain wasn't just about being relegated to the garage. That was merely the latest manifestation of a pattern that had defined my family relationships for as long as I could remember. As the tears flowed, memories surfaced one after another, each revealing the consistent thread of inequality that had woven through my life. On my 10th birthday, my parents had promised a special celebration. I had invited my few close friends, excited for the cake and games my mother had planned. The morning of the party, Hannah, then 7, decided she wanted to go to the community pool instead. My father announced a change of plans. My birthday party would be shortened to accommodate Hannah's wish. My friends arrived to a rushed celebration. Presents opened hurriedly before my father ushered everyone out, so we could get to the pool before it gets too crowded. The day became about Hannah's swimming rather than my birthday. When I made the honor roll throughout high school, maintaining a perfect GPA while participating in extracurricular activities. My achievements were acknowledged with brief congratulations. That's nice, dear. We expect nothing less from you. Yet when Hannah managed to bring her grades up from failing to barely passing, our parents threw a celebration dinner and bought her a new stereo system as a reward for her tremendous effort. The pattern continued into adulthood. When I graduated college with honors and secured my first job in Chicago, my parents attended the ceremony, but left early to help Hannah move into her new apartment, an apartment they had helped her afford despite her lack of steady employment. When I married James, they contributed a modest amount to our wedding, explaining that finances were tight. 6 months later, they somehow found the means to provide Hannah with a lavish wedding budget, 3 times what they had given me. I had always rationalized their behavior. Hannah needed more support. Hannah struggled more than I did. Hannah wasn't as naturally capable. I was the strong one who could take care of herself. But sitting by the lake, I finally confronted the painful truth: my parents simply valued Hannah more. Their love and support had always been conditional for me, but unlimited for her. My phone chimed with a text message from my mother. When are you coming back to move your things to the garage? Kyle will be arriving after dinner. No apology, no acknowledgement of my feelings, just the expectation that I would comply with their decision. As I stared at the message, my phone rang. The screen displayed my friend Morgan's name, a childhood friend who had remained close despite the distance between us. Hey, what's up? I answered, trying to sound normal. Alyssa, are you okay? You sound like you've been crying. Morgan's concern broke through my attempt at composure. I found myself explaining the situation, the words pouring out between renewed sobs. They're making you sleep in the garage while your brother-in-law takes your room. What the actual hell? Morgan's outrage was validating. That's beyond messed up, Alyssa. It's cruel. It's just how things have always been. Hannah gets what she wants. Even as I said it, I recognized the unhealthy acceptance in my voice. No, this isn't normal or acceptable, Morgan insisted. Look, my guest room is available if you want to come stay with me. It's a 6-hour drive, but at least you'd be treated with basic dignity. I considered her offer seriously. Morgan lived in Columbus, Ohio. Moving there would mean starting completely over in another new city. The job prospect I had here would be lost. Thank you, Morgan. I might take you up on that. But first, I need to stand up for myself. I've spent my entire life accepting their treatment, making excuses for it. Before I leave, I need them to hear the truth, even if it changes nothing. That's my girl, Morgan said supportively. You deserve better than a garage, and better than a family who treats you like an inconvenience. By the time we hung up, the sun was beginning to set. I had been at the park for hours, but the time had given me perspective and resolve. I started my car and drove back to the house, no longer the heartbroken daughter seeking approval, but a woman determined to advocate for her worth. When I returned to the house, I discovered some of my belongings already relocated to the garage. Cardboard boxes containing my clothes and personal items were stacked against the wall beside a rusty metal cot that had seen better days. A thin mattress had been placed on top, along with a pillow and a couple of blankets that smelled faintly of motor oil, despite recent washing. The concrete floor was cold beneath my feet, and the single bulb overhead cast harsh shadows across the cluttered space. My father's workbench dominated one-wall tools hanging in neat rows, while holiday decorations and miscellaneous storage filled the opposite side. There was barely room to walk between the makeshift bed and the rest of the garage contents. Inside the house, I found Kyle had already arrived and was setting up his things in my former bedroom. He looked uncomfortable when he saw me standing in the doorway. Alyssa, hey, I'm sorry about this arrangement. If it were up to me. He trailed off, clearly unwilling to complete the thought that might put him at odds with his wife or my parents. If it were up to you, you'd stay at your own house, sleep in the garage yourself, I prompted, not hiding my anger. Kyle shifted awkwardly. Hannah thought it would be easier this way, with her mom visiting and all. Before I could respond, Hannah appeared behind me. Oh, good, you're back. Mom and Dad were getting worried. Her tone suggested concern, but the smug satisfaction in her eyes told a different story as she surveyed the room that was now her husband's space. Kyle, I put your clothes in the middle drawer. The top one sticks sometimes. Thanks for your concern about where I'll be sleeping, I said pointedly. Hannah brushed past me to arrange Kyle's toiletries on the dresser. The garage isn't that bad. Dad put in that space heater. Besides, it's only temporary, right? Until you get your life back together. The casual dismissal of my situation stung, but I held my tongue, deciding to address the entire family at once, rather than engaging in another unwinnable argument with Hannah alone. Dinner that evening was a tense affair. My mother had prepared Kyle's favorite meal of pot roast and mashed potatoes, another subtle indicator of priorities. As we ate in uncomfortable silence, I finally spoke up. I want to discuss the sleeping arrangements again, I said calmly, setting down my fork. I understand Kyle's mother is visiting, but there are other solutions we haven't considered. My father sighed heavily. Alyssa, we've been through this. The decision is made. We promised Margaret the best accommodations, Hannah added. She has back problems and needs a proper bed. And I challenged. It's different, my mother interjected softly. Margaret is a guest. The implication hung heavy in the air. I wasn't considered a guest deserving of comfort despite my vulnerable situation. I was family who could be treated with less consideration than an in-law's mother. I understand being family means making sacrifices sometimes, I acknowledged. But why am I always the only one expected to sacrifice? Why not ask Kyle to commute from your house? Hannah. That's ridiculous, Hannah scoffed. It would be such an inconvenience. And sleeping in a cold garage isn't an inconvenience for me. My father's fist came down on the table, rattling the plates. Enough, I won't have you creating problems when we've opened our home to you during your time of need. Most parents wouldn't even do that for a divorced daughter in her 30s. You should be grateful we're giving you any place to stay. The harshness of his words shocked even my mother, who placed a restraining hand on his arm. Frank, that's not fair. What's not fair? He continued, shrugging off her touch. Is Alyssa acting entitled when we're helping her after her failed marriage? At least Hannah knows how to maintain a successful relationship. The casual cruelty of comparing my painful divorce to Hannah's marriage felt like a slap across the face. Kyle looked down at his plate, visibly uncomfortable, while Hannah wore a small, satisfied smile. My marriage ending wasn't a failure on my part, I said quietly, fighting to keep my voice steady. James cheated. Or did Hannah tell you it was somehow my fault when she was sharing all the details of my private life with you? My mother's surprised expression confirmed my suspicion. Hannah was just concerned about you. She mentioned you might have been working too much, not giving James the attention he needed. Are you seriously justifying his affair? I asked incredulously. And Hannah? Why were you discussing my marriage with Mom and Dad behind my back? Hannah shrugged unapologetically. The family needed to understand why you suddenly needed a place to stay. I was just filling in the details you left out. Like how James told you multiple times he felt neglected before he finally found comfort elsewhere. The betrayal cut deep. Not only had my sister been discussing my private marriage problems without my consent, but she had been spinning a narrative that placed blame on me rather than on James's infidelity. You have no idea what happened in my marriage, I said, my voice shaking with anger. And you had no right to share your twisted version with Mom and Dad. We're just worried about you, dear, my mother said placatingly. You've always been so focused on your career. Maybe if you'd prioritize differently. Stop. I stood up from the table, unable to bear any more. My divorce is not up for family discussion or judgment, and it certainly doesn't justify treating me like I'm less deserving of basic comfort and dignity than Kyle or his mother. I left the dining room and went outside to clear my head. Through the window I could see them continuing their meal conversation, flowing easily now that the difficult daughter had removed herself. Later that night, trying to sleep on the uncomfortable cot in the freezing garage, I could hear laughter from the house, the family enjoying evening television together, while I lay shivering under thin blankets, excluded physically and emotionally from the warmth of family connection. The sound of their laughter solidified something within me. This wasn't a temporary slight or misunderstanding. This was a fundamental expression of where I stood in my family's hierarchy of concern and respect. And for the first time in my life, I decided that their assessment of my worth was not one I had to accept. The next morning brought Kyle's mother Margaret's arrival. From my makeshift bed in the garage, I heard the commotion of welcome doors opening and closing, excited voices exchanging greetings. The smell of a special breakfast wafted through the crack under the door that connected the garage to the kitchen's cinnamon and coffee, creating a tempting aroma. No one called me in to join the family gathering. I took my time getting dressed in the frigid space, using the small utility sink in the corner to brush my teeth and wash my face with ice-cold water. By the time I entered the kitchen through the side door, the family was seated around the dining table enjoying a lavish spread of French toast, bacon, and fresh fruit. An elaborate flower arrangement decorated the center of the table, clearly purchased specially for Margaret's arrival. "Oh, there you are, Alyssa," my mother said with forced brightness. "Come meet Margaret." Margaret was a polished woman in her 60s, stylishly dressed with kind eyes that crinkled with genuine warmth as she turned to greet me. "Alyssa, it's so lovely to finally meet you. Kyle and Hannah have mentioned you often." "It's nice to meet you too," I replied, taking the only remaining seat at the far end of the table. As I reached for the coffee pot, I overheard my father explaining to Margaret, "Alyssa prefers staying in the garage. She's always been independent, likes her privacy." I froze mid-pour, stunned by the blatant lie. Margaret looked confused. "The garage? But isn't it cold out there? Surely there's a proper bedroom available," she said, concerned. Hannah jumped in smoothly. "Alyssa's going through a phase where she needs her space. Right, sis?" All eyes turned to me, my parents and sister silently willing me to maintain the false narrative they'd created. Only Kyle looked embarrassed, studying his plate intently. Something in me snapped. I set down the coffee pot carefully and addressed Margaret directly. "Actually, I was staying in my childhood bedroom until yesterday when my parents decided Kyle should have it, while you take Hannah's old room. I was told I had to move to the garage without discussion. There was no choice involved." A heavy silence fell over the table. Margaret's expression shifted from confusion to discomfort. Oh dear, I had no idea. I certainly wouldn't want to displace anyone. Perhaps I should look into a hotel. That's not necessary, my father said quickly, throwing me an angry look. Alyssa is creating drama where there is none. The garage arrangement is perfectly fine. It's freezing out there, I countered. The cot is uncomfortable, and I spent half the night listening to the furnace cycling on and off. If you're not happy with our hospitality, perhaps you should look elsewhere, my father suggested coldly. Hannah seized the opportunity. This is exactly what I was telling you about Dad. Alyssa's always been jealous of any attention I get. Now she's trying to make Margaret feel unwelcome just because she's my mother-in-law. This has nothing to do with jealousy, I responded, keeping my voice even despite my rising anger. This is about being treated with basic respect. You've always favored Hannah, and this is just the most recent example. We have never played favorites, my mother protested weakly. Really? I challenged. What about my 10th birthday party that got cut short because Hannah wanted to go swimming, or the time you missed my college honors ceremony to help Hannah move apartments, or how you gave her 3 times the wedding budget you gave me despite claiming finances were tight? My father's face reddened with anger. That's enough. I won't have you ruining Margaret's visit with your petty childhood grievances. They're not petty and they didn't just happen in childhood, I insisted. It's a pattern that's continued my entire life right up to yesterday, when you decided my comfort and dignity were less important than Kyle's convenience. Margaret looked deeply uncomfortable while Kyle finally spoke up. Maybe I should just commute from our house. It's really not that far. Nonsense, Hannah snapped. Alyssa's just being difficult as usual. Don't let her manipulate you. The breakfast ended with tense silence. Afterwards, I decided to retrieve some books from my room to help pass time during my job search. When I entered what had been my bedroom just yesterday, I discovered several boxes missing. Where are the rest of my things? I asked Kyle, who was arranging his clothes in the dresser. I'm not sure, he admitted. Hannah and your mom packed some things while I was bringing in luggage from the car. A terrible suspicion formed in my mind. I rushed outside to where the garbage cans stood by the curb for weekly pickup. Lifting the lid of the first one, my heart sank. There, among food scraps and discarded packaging, were my childhood yearbook swimming trophies and several framed photographs from my youth. I carefully retrieved each item, tears streaming down my face as I discovered beloved mementos tossed away without care or consultation. A handmade jewelry box my grandfather had crafted before his death. A collection of seashells from my first beach vacation. Letters from a childhood pen pal I had kept for sentimental reasons. All discarded as if they held no value. With arms full of rescued treasures, I returned to the house where my mother was cleaning up breakfast dishes. How could you throw these away? I asked, my voice breaking as I set the salvaged items on the counter. My mother looked uncomfortable, but not particularly remorseful. We needed to make space quickly. I kept the important things. You don't get to decide what's important to me, I said, disbelief coloring my voice. These are my memories, my life. Alyssa, you need to let go of the past, she sighed. At your age, clinging to childhood mementos isn't healthy. Hannah entered the kitchen, frowning at the collection of items on the counter. Are you digging through the trash now? That's a new low. These shouldn't have been in the trash in the first place, I retorted. Margaret appeared in the doorway, taking in the scene with evident discomfort. She opened her mouth as if to speak, then thought better of it and retreated. Later that afternoon, my parents and Hannah presented me with an ultimatum. My father cornered me in the garage as I attempted to create some semblance of livable space. This behavior stops now, he stated firmly. Either you accept the current arrangements without further complaint, or you need to find other accommodations. We won't have you making Margaret uncomfortable or creating tension during her visit. I looked at him, suddenly seeing with perfect clarity the conditional nature of my place in this family. I had always been welcome as long as I accepted less complained never and accommodated always. The moment I stood up for myself, I became a problem to be solved rather than a daughter to be supported, as if the universe had timed it perfectly. My phone rang at that moment. It was the hiring manager for my job interview. "Alyssa, good news. We'd like to offer you the position. When can you start?" A surge of hope coincided with the rock bottom of my family situation. As I negotiated details of the job offer, I watched through the garage window as Hannah emerged from the house carrying something familiar, a garment bag containing my preserved wedding dress. One of the few items from my marriage I had kept for sentimental reasons, despite the painful ending. "What are you doing with that?" I asked after ending the call, stepping outside to confront her. "It's about the same size as my old dress," Hannah replied casually. "I thought I could alter it for the charity gala next month. It's not like you need it anymore." The casual appropriation of something so personal, regardless of its painful associations, crystallized everything. In that moment, I knew exactly what I needed to do. That evening, I waited until everyone had gone to bed before making a series of crucial phone calls. First, I contacted my old college roommate Jasmine, who lived just 45 minutes away. "Of course you can stay with me," she said immediately after I explained my situation. "My spare room is yours for as long as you need it. Come tomorrow, no need to give notice." Relief washed over me at her instant support. Next, I called a storage facility and reserved a small unit for my remaining possessions. Then I searched online for information about tenants' rights, discovering that even as a family member, I had certain legal protections against sudden eviction without proper notice. I followed up with a text to my lawyer friend Taylor, who confirmed my findings. They can't legally force you into uninhabitable conditions or throw you out without proper notice, family or not. "Want me to send an official letter?" "Not yet," I replied. "But thank you for the information. It gives me leverage if needed." Before sunrise, I woke and carefully retrieved my remaining treasured items from the trash, cleaning each one methodically. I took photographs documenting the bedroom before and after Kyle's arrival, as well as the garage conditions. These weren't just for potential legal purposes, but to remind myself later that my memory of events was accurate, not the revisionist version my family would likely create. I visited the bank when it opened, establishing a new account my parents couldn't access. My mother had mentioned sometimes borrowing from my old account during family emergencies, which typically involved Hannah's needs. I transferred my funds, limited as they were, to ensure financial independence. After accepting the job offer with a start date the following Monday, I paid for 1 month at the storage facility and spent 2 hours carefully organizing my rescued and remaining possessions there. The wedding dress, reclaimed from Hannah's closet while she was out shopping with Margaret, went into special storage. Though I would likely never wear it again, the principle mattered. It was mine to decide its fate, not Hannah's. That evening, I asked everyone to join me for a family dinner. My mother seemed surprised by my request, but agreed, perhaps hoping my attitude had improved. I prepared a simple meal, nothing elaborate like Margaret's welcome breakfast, but nourishing and plentiful. As we gathered around the table, I remained standing, a position of authority I rarely claimed in family settings. "I wanted us to have this meal together because I have something important to say," I began calmly. "Tomorrow morning, I'll be moving out." My mother's fork clattered against her plate. "But where will you go? You don't have an apartment yet." "I've made arrangements. I've also accepted the job offer I interviewed for last week. I start on Monday." My father nodded approvingly, clearly relieved that the problem was solving itself. "That's good news. Sounds like things are looking up for you." "They are, but not in the way you think," I continued. "This situation with the garage has made me realize something important about our family dynamic that I've been accepting for far too long." Hannah rolled her eyes dramatically. Here we go again with the favorite child routine. "Actually, Hannah, this isn't about you. It's about me and what I deserve." I turned to address my parents directly. "I've spent my entire life accepting less from you, making excuses for the inequity in how you treat Hannah and me. I convinced myself it was because she needed more support, or because I was stronger. But the truth is simpler. You prioritize her comfort, her needs, and her wants above mine. Always have. That's not true, my mother protested weakly. It is true, I countered gently. And you know it is. What's happened this week is just the most obvious example. You would never have asked Hannah to sleep in the garage while giving her room to someone else. You would never have thrown away her cherished possessions without permission. My father's expression hardened. You're being dramatic. We've given you a place to stay during a difficult time. You have, and I appreciated that until I realized the conditions attached. Did you know that what you did asking me to move to uninhabitable conditions without notice is actually illegal? Even family members have tenants' rights. This clearly surprised them. My father's confidence faltered slightly. I'm not saying this to threaten legal action, I clarified. I'm saying it because it illustrates how inappropriate your treatment has been. You wouldn't treat a stranger renting a room this way, yet you felt justified in doing it to your daughter. Kyle, who had been silent, finally spoke. I've been uncomfortable with this arrangement from the start. I told Hannah I could easily drive back and forth from our house. Hannah shot him a venomous look. Don't take her side. It's not about sides, he replied with uncharacteristic firmness. It's about what's right. Margaret, who had been quietly observing, added her perspective. I had no idea I was displacing anyone. I would have happily taken the sofa or found a hotel. Families should support each other during difficult times, not create additional hardship. My father, seeing his authority challenged from unexpected quarters, attempted to regain control. This is all a misunderstanding that's been blown out of proportion. Alyssa, if you're unhappy with the garage, we can reconsider. It's too late for that, I said quietly. This isn't just about sleeping arrangements. It's about a lifetime of being treated as less valuable, less deserving of consideration and respect. I'm not angry anymore, just clear-eyed about where I stand with you all, and I've decided I deserve better. My mother began to cry softly. We love you, Alyssa. We never meant to make you feel less important. I believe that you love me, I acknowledged. But love should come with respect and equal treatment. Going forward, I'll be building relationships with people who value me as I am not despite it. I outlined my boundaries for future interaction, a monthly family dinner if they wished holidays to be determined, and no financial entanglements of any kind. They listened in stunned silence, perhaps never having imagined their accommodating older daughter capable of such firm self-advocacy. The next morning, I packed my car methodically while the family processed our conversation. My father made a half-hearted attempt to help carry boxes, but mostly watched in silence, his expression a mixture of confusion and grudging respect. My mother fluttered anxiously, suddenly offering food packages and household items to get you started. I accepted a few things to ease her conscience. Understanding her gifts were her way of expressing remorse she couldn't verbalize. Hannah remained coldly distant, angry that the family dynamic had been publicly challenged. Kyle, however, helped load several heavy items and whispered, "Good for you," when we were momentarily alone. The most powerful moment came when I handed my house key back to my father. Something in his expression shifted as he accepted it, an acknowledgement perhaps that our relationship had fundamentally changed. I was no longer the daughter seeking approval, but an adult woman who had found her worth independent of his validation. "You'll let us know when you're settled?" he asked gruffly. "I will," I promised, maintaining eye contact. As I drove away, I felt no dramatic flare of victory or bitter satisfaction. Instead, I experienced something more valuable, a quiet dignity, and the weightless sensation of finally putting down a burden I had carried my entire life. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time I was traveling it on my own terms. The 20-minute drive to Jasmine's apartment felt like crossing a boundary between old and new chapters of my life. When I arrived, she was waiting on the porch of her modest duplex coffee mugs in hand and a warm smile on her face. "Welcome to your temporary sanctuary," she said, enveloping me in a hug that carried none of the complicated emotional baggage I'd grown accustomed to with my family. The guest room is small, but it has an actual bed with a heated blanket, and I promise no one will throw away your stuff. That first night away from my parents' house, I slept better than I had in weeks, perhaps months. The space was mine without condition or judgment. The simple gift of being treated as a valued equal brought tears to my eyes as I lay in the darkness processing the magnitude of what had transpired and the decision I had made to prioritize my own well-being. My new job started Monday morning, and I threw myself into the work with focus and determination. The position as a financial advisor at a local firm paid less than my Chicago salary, but offered stability and growth potential. Each day, I built new professional connections, slowly creating a foundation for the next phase of my life. In the evenings, Jasmine and I would cook dinner together, sharing stories and laughter. She introduced me to her friend circle, people who knew nothing of my history and accepted me simply as I was. Gradually, I found myself building a support system independent of family ties or childhood connections. After 3 weeks, I began seeing a therapist who specialized in family dynamics. Dr. Williams helped me understand the patterns that had shaped my relationships and self-perception. "What you're describing is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic," she explained during one session. "It's not uncommon in families, but that doesn't make it healthy or acceptable. Your decision to establish boundaries was a crucial step toward healing." I maintained my promise of no contact with my family by my choice, needing space to process and strengthen my new understanding of healthy relationships. My parents called frequently at first, messages ranging from my mother's tearful pleas to my father's brusque inquiries about when I would get over this phase. Hannah sent several angry texts accusing me of tearing the family apart and making Mom cry. Surprisingly, Kyle reached out separately with a thoughtful message. "What happened wasn't right. For what it's worth, I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. Take whatever time you need. We'll be here when and if you're ready." His message, free from manipulation or guilt, was the only one I responded to, with a simple thank you. 6 months after leaving my parents' home, I signed a lease on a small one-bedroom apartment. The monthly rent stretched my budget, but the pride of having my own space again, earned through my own efforts, was worth every penny. Jasmine helped me furnish it with secondhand finds and homey touches. The day I moved in, we toasted with cheap champagne, celebrating not just a new apartment, but a new sense of self-worth. As Thanksgiving approached, my parents reached out with an invitation to the annual family gathering. After careful consideration and discussion with my therapist, I declined politely but firmly. "Thank you for the invitation, but I've made other plans this year. I wish you all a wonderful holiday." I wrote, choosing self-care over obligation without apology or explanation. Instead, I hosted a small Friendsgiving in my new apartment with Jasmine and a few other friends I'd made. We cooked together, shared stories, and created new traditions unburdened by past dynamics. The contrast between this warm gathering and the tension-filled family holidays of my past couldn't have been more striking. A week later, my father called. His voice sounded older, less certain than the authoritative tone I'd grown up with. "Your mother and I have been doing some thinking," he began awkwardly. "What happened with the garage? It wasn't right. We should have handled it differently." It wasn't exactly an apology, but coming from my father, it represented a significant concession. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, maintaining the boundary while acknowledging his effort. "Will we see you at Christmas?" he asked. "I'm not sure yet," I answered honestly. "I need more time." My mother called the next day, her conversation more emotional. "I miss you, Alyssa. The house feels empty without you. I've been thinking about what you said about treating you and Hannah differently. I never meant to hurt you." "I know you didn't," I said gently. "But impact matters more than intent." I needed to create some distance to heal from that impact. "Are you doing okay? Do you need anything?" she asked, and for once the question seemed genuinely focused on my well-being rather than an attempt to regain control. "I'm doing well, Mom. I have a good job, my own place, and I'm building a life I'm proud of." "I'm glad," she said, her voice thick with tears. "I'm proud of you too. I should have said that more often." Hannah's attitude remained resentful, her texts sparse and pointed. My growing independence had disrupted the family system that had benefited her, and she lacked the self-awareness to understand her role in what had transpired. In time, perhaps that would change, but I no longer pinned my emotional well-being on her approval or understanding. Kyle and his mother Margaret ironically became unexpected allies. Margaret sent a thoughtful handwritten letter expressing her admiration for my courage and apologizing for her unwitting role in the catalyst event. Kyle occasionally sent friendly pressure-free text updates, respecting my boundaries while maintaining a connection that might eventually serve as a bridge back to the wider family when I was ready. As the one-year anniversary of my departure approached, I celebrated with a small personal ritual. I unpacked the final box from storage, one containing photographs and mementos from my childhood. Instead of hiding them away, I selected a few meaningful images to display in my living room, reclaiming my history on my own terms. That evening, I wrote in my journal, reflecting on the journey. A year ago, I was told to sleep in a garage while others took my space. Today, I understand that was just a physical manifestation of what had been happening emotionally my entire life. The greatest gift of this painful year has been learning to build my own home not just in a physical space but within myself. I now understand that respect isn't something you earn through achievement or sacrifice. It's a basic requirement for any healthy relationship. Sometimes building your own shelter is necessary when the family roof has too many leaks. The next day, I received a job offer with a significant promotion recognition of the dedication and skill I demonstrated over the past year. As I celebrated this milestone, I realized something profound. For the first time, I wasn't mentally rehearsing how I would explain my achievement to my family, or bracing for it to be minimized. My accomplishments were my own valuable, inherently not dependent on others' validation. Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between family expectations and your own well-being? The hardest lesson I learned was that sometimes loving yourself means walking away from situations that diminish you, even when those situations involve people you love. If my story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of self-discovery and healing. And remember, creating boundaries isn't about building walls, it's about defining the foundations of your own home. Thank you for listening, and may you always find the courage to claim the respect and love you deserve.